Hello, I'm Michael Kurland, CEO and co-founder of Branded Group, an award-winning facility maintenance and construction management company that services multi-site commercial properties such as retail, restaurants, healthcare facilities, and educational institutions. Welcome to the Be Better podcast. Each week, I interview thought leaders from a variety of industries who will share their stories and the lessons they learn as they strive to be better for their clients, partners, employees, and their community. Are you ready to be better? All right, and welcome to another episode of the Be Better podcast. I'm your host, Michael Kurland. Got a very special guest today. We're talking about gratitude. Darin Hollingsworth, Chief Gratitude and Accountability Officer from the Working Gratitude podcast. Welcome to the show, Darin. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your podcast.
Well, thanks, and it's great to reconnect with you from us having had a great discussion on working gratitude, and that evolved from my work in coaching and consulting. And I was encountering leaders like you and others who really were exhibiting gratitude in the workplace, and I wanted to bring some focus to that. And the funny part of it is, I started podcasting back in 2012 when nobody knew what a podcast was, and you had to download them to an iPod. So it's fun to see how it's evolved, and my work continues with coaching and consulting, both in the nonprofit space and other executives, with a conversation always around what they are grateful for at work.
Yeah, and for those of you out there that don't know, Darin actually took the leap of faith and reached out to me and asked me to be on his podcast many moons ago, which sparked the interest of myself in podcasting, because I was not very interested in it at all until I came on your show. And look at here we are, like I guess it's probably like 2.5 years later, you know. And,
yeah, just about.
And now you're on my show, and it's great. It's great how, you know, the full circle, right? So
the world brings us back around, doesn't it?
It does, and we are grateful for that. So speaking of gratitude, I want to jump right in and want to ask you, how do you personally practice gratitude on a daily basis?
I've got a couple of practices that have evolved over the years. Daily, I do a gratitude list, and it's, for me, I found an app, years ago, produced originally by gratefulness.org, a network for grateful living. And it's a simple, fun little app that you plant a seed of gratitude and make your list, and you can put a picture with it. And then you come back to it the next day, and when you plant the next seed, the first flower grows a little bit. And I smile when I say that, because I did it just because it was convenient, and it was one of the first apps of its kind out there back, like I said, probably 2013, 14, 15. And I shared it with some clients, and they ended up sharing it with their children. And that brought me great joy when work that I was doing with adults, and I don't have kids, kind of trickled down to their kids. And so, yeah, that's one of them. And then I try to do some type of affirmative outreach to a particular person every day with some call of gratitude or a text of gratitude about a way that they've impacted my life recently. And it can be simple. It's not all depth and high and lofty. It's just, you know, thanks for being there for me, or thanks for showing up for that meeting, or thanks for covering for me for that meeting, whatever it might be.
And I think one thing you just said that I've found recently in my own life is, it doesn't always have to be like depth. You said depth and lofty, right? Like, you don't have to like have this like humongous showing of gratitude to someone, right? It could be as simple as like saying thank you when someone opens a door. But like, I think sometimes for a lot of people, when they're first starting to get into being grateful and reciprocating and showing gratitude on a daily basis, because they've probably either had it absent from their life, or they're starting to realize they need to get it into their life because of whatever other reasons, you know, you feel like maybe you haven't been grateful. So you got to make up for all this lost gratefulness that you didn't practice over a certain amount of time. But I think really, like, it is the small things. And you know, for me, I was journaling on a daily basis. I actually had, similar to your app, I had this journal, and it was a 5-year journey, and it was a page for every day of the year with 5 years on it, and it would have, it said 20, and then you
I
would fill.
remember seeing a book like that. I've seen one of those.
Yeah, so you would fill it in, and then you'd go through every single day of every year, and then year over year, and then you can go back and read it. So it was like, I got through year 3 of it, and then it was like, I'm doing this just to do it. I'm not really doing it to have, gratitude. And I got through the exercise because I did want to capture the memories. I took a year off, so it took me 6 years to capture 5 years because I was burnt out of doing it by year 4. So I don't think you have to have like this set schedule of gratitude. I don't think you have to have this overwhelming set, like what you think is the right way to produce gratitude. Right?
I totally agree with you, Michael, because when I started the app, I actually started it because I was living in San Francisco and I used it on public transportation because I was on public transportation going back and forth to work or going back and forth to meetings even or in my social life. And it was just easy to do. So it was a different time of day. Now my practice is at the beginning of the day, but you hit on a good point that if you do something rote, there are good habits and there are bad habits. But if you do something that is rote and just out of habit, you either got to mix it up or look at your motivation for exactly why you're doing it, what it's giving you, and how it's exhibiting elsewhere in your life. And I think that's great that you gave yourself permission to take a year off.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing, and thank you. And that's the one thing I think I've been practicing a lot since the beginning of 2021 is grace for myself. And that's
Yes.
another thing that I think a lot of people don't practice. And I am such a self-motivator, a self-starter that if I miss my workout, I'm beating myself up. If I didn't write in that journal on 10 a.m. on Tuesday and I missed a day, oh, you're the worst gratitude journalist ever, right? But now I'm starting to realize, like, as I've gotten into my lower 40s, I'm starting to realize that, it's okay. It's okay to miss a day, because if I'm writing every day just to write, then that's a chore. That's not actually practicing gratitude. But if I can write once a week and I can have like a thoughtful page long or 2 page, however long it is, and I really get some good gratitude onto that page, then that's what it's all about. So
you've used a great word that I love, and I avoided the word for a long time because to me it had some trailings of an overly fundamentalist conservative religious background, but the word grace is full of heart and allowing and accepting and first for yourself, and that's exactly what you've talked about. And so I love I love finding things that go with gratitude really well, but grace, gratitude, and growth are the things you just talked about, right? Because you've grown from a list or a rote and memory list to a writing and a journaling. And I have watched tons of people do that over time. And I will put a little plug in for sticking with it like you did and coming back to it when you did and letting it evolve. But and your listeners won't know this, but they can find out more about me, is that I had a really serious mental health crisis in 2018. And it was a while before I could really get back to gratitude. And it took doing the gratitude for the simple things, my dog, my best friend, and not things at all, but really people and services that came to me. And then the smooth transition that happened for me moving from San Francisco back to Tennessee. So I did re-implement it in my life almost as a baseline. If I do that, I know I'm going to get healthier. And that's where I say gratitude is a shifter and opens access to other higher level emotions.
I totally agree. And I love that we're just like going on this, right?
Yeah.
So similarly, I was doing the list, like I said, and I got away from it. And, I actually haven't journaled since November 13th. And that was the day that my dad passed away. And I just
sorry
haven't.
For your loss.
Yeah, thank you. And I just haven't been able to write it down. Right. I haven't been able to, I got this block, but I keep telling myself, like, just do it, because I know it's going to flow. And I think maybe I'm a little fearful of the rawness that'll probably come off the pen, but you know, the grace of when is it going to get there, and I think you know that's building up so that I can get back to.
I'm going to send you a quote. I'm going to paraphrase it now, but I'll send you a quote and maybe you can put it in your show notes or just an annotation to it. Is that, and it comes from a writer that I've got acquainted with through gratefulness.org that I mentioned earlier. And there was a quote that came up in one of my memories from like 2015 today on social media. And it talks about the parallel between grief and gratitude. Because with gratitude, there is an acceptance. When you are grateful something, it means you've accepted something from someone else or something beautiful in your life. Grief is the same way. When we can, and I've gone through a lot of grief in my life, so I've used this as a tool. My dad died when I was 19. So accepting grief, processing grief, we're not thankful for tragic and horrible events. When we get to the point and get through the stages of grief, that we can find our memories, we can be grateful for the memories. And that's where I love the quote, and I'll have to get you that quote because I'm not saying it as eloquently as she did, but it's grief and gratitude are parallel experiences.
Again, totally agree. You know, the journaling aside, the one thing that the grief did bring me was, you know, me and my father had an up and down relationship, and there was a lot of I don't want to say animosity, that's not the right word, but there was a lot of, you know, hard feelings from just certain things that happened over the course of our life together that I'm sure most fathers and sons have, right? And the things that so when he passed away, he's got he's from Brooklyn, New York, and he's got this like great group of friends that he went to high school with, that he's still friends with, that he was still friends with to this day. And they all went to high school and they're like 75 now. So all these guys reached out to me and they started telling me stories. And towards the end of my dad's life, I was trying to get him into a assisted living home because he was getting up there and he wasn't moving as well. And he would tell me, yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I'm going to go. And then his buddy called me and told me, you know, I know you were doing the right thing for your dad. You were trying to get him in that assisted living home. He called me and told me there's no way in hell I'm ever going to that thing. So if my dad were alive, I would have been so angry. Right. But
right.
Because of the grief and the gratitude of that story, I was able to laugh and realize, you know, I was grateful for that story. I was grateful for my father and who he was.
Isn't that a great shifter, man?
Yeah.
Like to take such a raw emotion, and thanks for sharing that, but such a raw emotion and be able to shift it even a little bit, you know, that's the key. And we both talked about this. It's not the big, well-written diatribes of research. And I'm a research geek about gratitude because I needed it coming, kind of swinging the pendulum from that very spiritual perspective, but I needed to know that there was science behind the way gratitude changes your mind. And there is, but it doesn't have to be all that. It's like, when you can be grateful for that phone call from that friend that helped you completely react differently than you would have at a different time.
It's also a shift in mindset too. You know,
Yep.
it's you get that like I just went for a run right before we started recording this, and I was getting down on the pier, and I had a buddy. I was thinking about him the other day. I haven't talked to him in probably 6 months, and I just ran into him on the pier. And like normally, I'd feel kind of, you know, ashamed that I hadn't talked to him in 6 months, but today I was like, hey man, I'm so happy to see you. Like I was just grateful I ran into him. So just little things like that. But let's get to the second question here. We got some this is great stuff. I want to keep it moving. We've kind of discussed all this already, but like I really want to get to your core of why is it important to show gratitude? You know, we've got all these ancillary great stories, but why, Darin, do you believe that it's important to show gratitude?
That's a great way to bring us back to some substance in the conversation, and I alluded to it. I started a gratitude practice probably back in 2008, and just through readers and reading and teaching that I was encountering from various perspectives. And it still felt like I needed that research that I alluded to a few minutes ago. And so then I found the Greater Good Science Center at Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. And they were already initiating, and Bob Emmons is the leading scholar. And it let me marry my heart and my mind in gratitude. And that's what I have worked to do. And why my podcast was and my work at Odonata Coaching and Consulting is about bringing gratitude to the workplace, because it's I was taught to write thank you notes as a kid, so it's been a part of my psyche forever. Like, we got a $2 bill for Christmas in an envelope on the Christmas tree from an uncle. We wrote a thank you note, and I'm glad. But now,
You remember those $2 bills too.
yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, I'm 52, so I'm the early 50s, and yeah, that was a big deal when the $2 bills were reissued, and it was just fun for a little kid, right?
Right.
But we wrote a thank you note, and I have been told time and time again in my career that because I wrote the thank you note, I got the second interview, and I may not have gotten the job, but I wrote a handwritten thank you note for an interview. And then as a major gifts fundraiser, which is another part of my career, I know that my donors, some of my donors to this day that I stay in touch with, they still have notes that I wrote them thanking them for their support of childhood cancer or of a university. And so thankfulness, gratitude has been a part of my life and my journey. And then when I started to see it and its application in the workplace, that's when I knew that there was an alignment for me, like beyond some just personal value that had been instilled in me. But I knew that there was a way and a place to continue the conversation. And, you know, it's let me encounter people like you who are entrepreneurs, leaders in their field, but we get to have these discussions that bridge kind of personal and professional. And the academy, the researchers are finding that CEOs and everyone are absolutely embracing that. And to go along with it, and I know we've talked about this a little bit, kindness and compassion in the workplace are kind of my next level, is where I want to go with my work.
Yeah, great answers. Lots to think about there. I can tell you, we're coming up on our 7-year anniversary, and after year 1 is when I really needed to start focusing on the gratitude, because I was just running this business that was making money, but I just wasn't happy, and I needed to give something back. And so, I find that to be gratitude for my success as a company, right? I was able to pay it forward and start utilizing the company to help some of these nonprofits out around in and around
Well, your core
Orange County.
values in that way, Michael, that's what attracted me and why I did the cold call, so to speak, on LinkedIn. When I was seeing in my feed things about the way you do your work, I didn't even know what kind of business you were doing, but I could tell it was aligned with this mindset. And I'm thrilled that seventh anniversary in a business, particularly when a year and a half of that has been in a pandemic. You're doing all right. I'm grateful for you.
Well, thank you. I am also grateful. I'm grateful for about to hit that 7-year anniversary, especially during the pandemic. And on and on we can go about the stories of how gratitude has helped at least me. And I hope for the listeners out there, if they're not practicing gratitude, they're going to start seriously considering, getting that into at least their weekly routine.
Yeah.
So again, from what you're saying, why it's important, I totally agree. I mean, we're nothing if we don't show gratitude. It's like yin and yang, right? Like, how can you even be happy if you can't be grateful, right? So if you can't show gratitude for where you are, where you've come from, how you've gotten there, or even if your situation isn't as great, like to be alive, things of that nature, then how can you ever find happiness in anything that you're doing, right? That's kind of how I really look at it.
I totally agree with you, and we're like-minded in that way, because I think grateful people are happy people, and that sounds kind of cliche-ish or like a Hallmark card, but it's a truth that you and I have found in our lives, right? Like,
Mhm.
and happy, for as someone who's gone through some major mental health, depression, anxiety, PTSD, I'm not always outwardly happy, but the emotions evoked by gratitude help me offset those mental health struggles.
Totally. I've definitely had my bouts and ups and downs. I've never actually had depression, but I've had times of being depressed for certain,
Mhm.
actions that have happened. And gratitude has definitely allowed me to put things back into perspective. And this is kind of, we've already kind of talked about this next question. So I want to like throw it out there and then we can kind of keep rolling with it. But we're talking about gratitude. And so you mentioned it before. How has being grateful helped you to overcome your obstacles? You just
Mhm.
mentioned some mental health bouts. I talked about my father. I mean, I think any obstacle in your life that you've probably ever overcame, gratitude's got to be linked in there somewhere, right?
That's a good point to look at. Like, if you can't find it immediately, like what's going on in your life right now is really hard, look back, right? And say, okay, how can I be grateful for something that happened before? That maybe you had neglected to be grateful for. And this happens a lot, I think, for people. And because my work has been focused on gratitude in the workplace, people will reflect on thanking a mentor, for getting them through a difficult time at work, getting them through. One of my questions has always been, what is a difficult time that you got through in your career that you can now be thankful for? Because you learned something from it, or it got you out of a negative situation, and now you can be grateful. And I've got the stories for myself and for so many other people that when you flip it, look at the other side of that coin of what the challenge was, and then there is truly always something to be grateful for, in life and in work. And you and I and several other of our kind of gratitude colleagues and champions are on a mission to help people see that.
I totally agree. I can tell you whenever I've had some sort of major challenge in my life, it's usually when I start recognizing the gratitude
Mhm.
that challenge either becomes less onerous or
Yep.
difficult. For example, I'm dealing with a lawsuit right now, and it's not it's a frivolous one. I won't get into details, but it made me very angry because I did all the right things, and someone exploited the system, found a loophole, whatever. And I was mad because I'm like, I did everything right. I did all this stuff right. But I finally realized, and I let go of the anger, and I finally realized it's because I'm grateful now that I've learned my lesson. I learned a few lessons from it. I'm going to take those lessons forward, and now I'm moving past it. And so I'm putting it in my rear view, and I'm grateful to put that in my rear view because I'll take the lessons I learned from it. And it wasn't the most fun experience, but I'm grateful that it happened, and those things won't happen again. So we're in a better position going forward.
Isn't it a great springboard? Like, once you have to confront anger. And I've been accused in my social and professional circles at times of having a toxic positivity or a reckless optimism because of this emphasis on my go-to coping mechanism of gratitude. And anger is anger. It happens. And when you get in that kind of situation where people are attacking you or your business or people that work for you and you care about them, you get we get into fight or flight mode. That's how we're created. What gratitude does for us is, because we're higher level beings, we can stop and notice, okay, that's anger, but I have a choice right now. I can use that anger in a different way, let it pass like a cloud in the sky or a train on the train tracks, and then look for where the gratitude is.
Totally. And I have this little side story I got to share with you, which you said that you've been accused of being overly gracious and whatnot. So I had engaged in a therapist, and he
Mhm.
gave me this personality test, and I'd never taken it before. He was a cognitive therapist, fix yourself by doing the work yourself, which I was all about.
Mhm.
I never want to take a pill if I don't have to. And he said, let's take this personality test, and I take it, and he said, well, the test is valid, and he said your biggest personality trait is that you're histrionic, which I had never heard that word
Hmm.
before,
Mhm.
but it means the same thing. It's like, it's a great thing because you're very always looking on the bright side, and you're always expressing gratitude. He's like, here's how it's a bad thing. Your friend tells you they have like cancer, and you're like, we're gonna beat this, yeah, 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 and your friend probably just wants to hear, I'm sorry that you have cancer. So
Or that really sucks. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I can relate totally to what you're saying here. Um, so let's jump to the last question. I think this is a good one for the audience to listen to. What best practices can you share about how to develop a social impact strategy, and how do you engage your team?
I love this question because we're both very aligned that once you find this lifestyle of gratefulness, it's not all about saying thank you or writing a thank you note. It is about making an impact where you are. And I have coached small businesses, into entrepreneurs, and then in the nonprofit environment, I see a lot of this is people make money and they want to give back. And the key is starting, and it's usually with service because, for example, younger professionals who they may still be accumulating their wealth. They just want to get involved. They want to that's a great word. And I'm glad you worded that question that way. They want to make an impact. And sometimes they can't write a check and don't want to. They want to get involved with an organization. It's harder. It's been harder during a pandemic, but there are still ways, to make phone calls. And we've just come off a political season, and I'm not talking about political phone calls. I'm talking about, now that assisted living facilities can't have guests, maybe they can work out to have people make phone calls to people who don't have anyone else calling them. Anything from on that continuum to really engaging with skill sets. And this is where I work with a lot of people who if you've got a skill set, either management, leadership, finance, or some other creative skill, take that away from your workplace and see where it fits into the community for a mission that aligns with your values.
I think that's great information. You're already good at it. Let's take it out of
Exactly.
work and put it into where some other people can benefit from your skill set. I love it. I actually, it's kind of how we ended up with Habitat. It's to what you said to a T. That was one of our first partners, and it was because we're in the facility management, construction management space, so swinging hammers is nothing new to us,
Right.
and we were able to go do the work ourselves. I didn't want to write a check because everyone I wanted to get involved was like, oh yeah, you can donate $5,000, and I'm like, I don't have $5,000 to donate, and B, that's not what I'm looking to do here. Like, I don't feel good just about writing a check. I want to get my sleeves rolled up and get in
And
there.
your people, wherever they are, you've told me this, your people can do that in their community, right? Like
Yep.
you can lead that as a corporate value,
Mm-hmm.
but you've made it accessible, and it's collaborative in that way that even if two different teams and two different geographies but they know what it feels like to work as a team on a project outside work. That feels great.
Yep. We've actually done nationwide build days where our New York team and our California team have done a Habitat build day on the same day. And those have been real fun. We haven't done those in a while, just with pandemic. There's
Yeah.
nowhere to do it. But I will say I got the itch the other day, and we're doing some service work next week where there's a food pantry where they do packed meals for seniors, and I was just like,
Great.
I'm gonna go pack some meals. Like, what else? Why not? I need to get out there. So yeah, giving back. So I got this last question I ask everybody.
Okay.
What do you consider yourself to be an expert at, and what advice do you have for the audience to become an expert at said thing? There's no wrong answer.
Yeah, I've been reflecting on this a lot in the past week in some writing I'm doing in the direction of maybe a book in the future. Does that sound tentative? So expert writer, I am not. Easier sometimes to say what we're not, but I really do think, and that's why I've created 8 years ago my title for my organization. I'm good at gratitude and I'm good at accountability. So along with that goes encouragement, and that's what makes a good coach or a good consultant, bringing skill sets about fundraising and nonprofit management. And those then transfer not only from my desk, if you will, my professional life, but to my personal life, and they make me proud.
Well, that's good advice. I like hearing it. And one thing you said in your title that we didn't really touch on was accountability. I think we can do an entire season on that. So we'll have to have you back when we get to the accountability season. Darin, it's been great having you on. If the audience wants to get a hold of you, how can they reach you?
I'm LinkedIn, Darin Hollingsworth, and then my website is workinggratitude.com. I haven't published new episodes in a little while, but the archive is there, and that will lead your listeners to other places about other parts of my work.
Well, Darin, thank you so much for being on. Audience, if you want to get a hold of him, you heard how to get there. And until next time. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that today's episode inspired you to become a purpose-driven leader in your career or your community. There is no doubt that when we lead with purpose, we can change lives. If you enjoyed today's show, I'd be grateful if you would take a moment to rate us on your preferred listening platform. To learn more about Branded Group's Be Better experience and how we provide industry-leading, on-demand facility maintenance, construction management, and special project implementation, visit us at www.branded-group.com. Be sure to follow us on social media, and you can also reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. Until next time, be better.